Good morning, friends. I just wanted to give you a 2-minute warning. We're not starting just yet, but if you want to go get another cup of coffee or some more bacon, you have 2 minutes to do so, and then we'll get started in 2 minutes. Good morning. Welcome back to the Community College Association of Texas Trustees Annual Conference and the Board of Trustees Institute. Welcome, welcome. We're going to get a really exciting day started right now. We're going to kick off with this really informative plenary session. I know that you all had such a great time yesterday. I've heard so much good feedback about the conversations that you've had and the time that you've had fellowshipping with friends and talking about how to be the best trustee you can for the college that you care so deeply about. So thank you so very much for the way that you've engaged. I've heard so many good remarks about that engagement. So today we're going to continue with our conversation. As you recall yesterday, I said this is a Board of Trustees Institute type framing of this conference. And that means that you have this continual set of conversations that you're having. So I want you to, even as you're listening to the plenary speakers this morning, I want you to be reflecting on what you thought about yesterday. So yesterday morning, we had an excellent presentation by Byron McClinney. And during that presentation, you were taking notes on your handout. So I want you to be recalling the things you were saying to yourself yesterday during the plenary session. And you went out to some breakout sessions. You got to have some more intimate conversations with some national leaders about some really important conversations. And I heard that you all very much engaged in those breakout sessions as well, so I thank you for that. So I want you to be recalling all of the things that you were talking about and thinking about yesterday, even as we enter into this plenary this morning. So we have a big day planned. And what we want to kick off this plenary session with first is, and I hope that you all have sort of math in the morning kind of brains. If you like math in the morning, you're going to like this next 15 minutes. So you know that we had 3 tenets that we are going to be championing during these sessions. That you are creating a culture of change, that you're setting the strategic direction, and you're also monitoring what matters. And so there's always going to be a lot of data involved in these conversations. And so I have with me my new colleague at the center, Christina Flores, who is just formerly a math instructor for Austin Community College for many years. She was also with Teach for America, so you kind of understand her heart already. We are very lucky to be able to snag her. She's now our Director of Research and Evaluation at the Success Center. And she just calls herself a data geek, and she loves to geek out over spreadsheets, so that's the type of personality she has. And she has been absolutely great with setting us up with being a national leader in being able to supply and analyze data with our community colleges. So I've asked her to come and give you just a sneak peek of some of the data that we have that you'll be looking at in the coming days. So Christina, please come. Would you please help me welcome Christina to the stage?
Thank you so much, Cynthia, and good morning, everybody. I am quite a bit of a nerd, so prepare yourselves. But I'm going to tell you a little bit today about one of the key components of our Texas Pathways strategy, and that is the knowledge development work that we've been doing. Maybe. Can I have some help with the slides? Oh, there we go. Perfect. Thank you so much. So we have several strategies that we're using with all 50 community colleges engaged in guided pathways, and one is knowledge development. We have the unique and awesome opportunity to learn from so many colleges engaged in this work, and we're really focused on making sure that what we produce is actionable research, knowledge that y'all can take back and put into work with your colleges. So we have a renowned committee, the Knowledge Development Steering Committee, composed of practitioners and researchers across the country that guide us to help us to implement the research projects that we do. And we have 3 main goals. We want to build the knowledge base about what's going on with Texas Pathways. We have an entire state working in guided pathways, and that's unique. We want to make sure that we enhance the impact of this work. So the work that the boards are doing to focus on student-centered governance, the work that the presidents are doing to set the strategic direction and plan forward for the college, and the work that the colleges are doing on the ground to implement these practices. And we also want to make sure that each of our community colleges has the capacity to do this type of work internally and move their work forward. So we have a theory of change, and spoiler alert, we have evidence that it's working, but we believe at the Texas Success Center that if we provide high-quality professional learning opportunities to boards of trustees and college practitioners, and we engage our colleges with resident faculty and coaching, that in turn is going to help the colleges implement the Texas Pathways strategy. Together, we believe that is going to translate into improved student outcomes because we are all here today to make sure that our students are fulfilling their goals and leading to lives where they can sustain their families and enjoy their lives together. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one of these components of the things that we've collected and the things that we've learned. So first off, here we are at a high-quality professional learning opportunity, the Board of Trustee Institute and the CCATT Annual Conference. And so what you're going to work on today in your team time is how to think about those 3 components that Dr. McClenny introduced yesterday, and you're going to actually culminate tomorrow with an action plan. And so what do we do with those action plans? Well, we go and we check on if you followed through on your action plan, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we do that. So we recently published the Board of Trustees Institute Impact Report from 2019. And you may be thinking, why are you doing a report from 2019 now? Well, I will tell you. So as I mentioned, you'll do a commitment to action. We give a year's time forward to see how that translates into practice. And then we go through the incredibly fun process of digging through board agendas and minutes. And for some of y'all who post the videos of your meetings, we watch the videos. We look through board policy, we look through strategic plans, and we look for evidence of those commitments to action. And so in 2019, we had these colleges attend, and we took their commitments to action, and we looked forward, and we said, how did these translate into practice and governance decisions at the colleges? From 2019, we found 4 main themes emerge from what y'all committed to do and followed through doing. The first was strategic planning. So you can see several colleges committed to strategic planning at the Board of Trustees Institutes and followed through with those actions. We saw it in the ability to identify strategic priorities. We saw evidence of strengthening board and CEO collaboration. We saw focused retreats being designed and held to look deeper into some of these lessons that were learned at the BOTI, as well as opportunities to foster communication across stakeholders at the colleges. We also saw a theme of data use emerge. So we know monitoring what matters is important, and so now once we know it's important, we're going to put it into practice, and we saw evidence of that. We saw folks examining and interpreting key performance indicators, conducting deeper data dives for questions of importance, and using data to examine equity and inclusion efforts at the college. We also saw policy emerge, an important part of governance. We saw policy around guided pathways implementation, student-focused implementation that goes hand in hand with guided pathways implementation, and equity emerging in policy decisions as well. And lastly, financial and fiduciary responsibilities emerged as a theme in those commitments to action. We saw folks aligning budgets with the college goals, budgeting for student success, and particularly our analysis ended right around when COVID started. So even at the end of our analysis, we saw those emergency funds becoming very important as our students were managing COVID and providing emergency funding. So you'll do your commitments to actions tomorrow, and we will tell you about it in 2022, what we've learned. 2020, there was not a Board of Trustees Institute because of COVID, so we'll think through the appropriate way to analyze the impact of those webinar series, but we look forward to the opportunity to see what great ideas you're gonna come up with and how those are gonna translate into practice. Now don't panic, this is a really mathy slide. So the other big piece of information that we collect is a scale of adoption. These are what your colleges are doing on the ground to implement the Texas Pathways strategy. So I'm gonna walk you through it. I wanna draw your eyes to the bottom, they said I had a laser, the bottom of the chart here. Ooh. And you'll see several practices boxed off. We have 4 pillars in the Texas Pathways strategy. The first pillar is mapping pathways to student end goals. The second pillar is helping students choose and enter a pathway. The third pillar is keeping students on a path. And the fourth pillar is ensuring students are learning. What you're looking at here is the number of colleges who self-reported being at some level of scale of adoption of these practices. And so at the top here is our colleges who have indicated they are at scale. So this means they're serving over 80% of their students in these practices. Now there's a lot of information on here, but we heard about the importance of math pathways yesterday, so I just want you all to look at 1E. 1E is math pathways. 34 of our colleges are at scale, putting students in the appropriate math aligned to their programs and career goals. That's fantastic. I mean, if you were, yeah, give yourselves a round of applause. Texas really is leading in math pathways, and spoiler alert again, I'm going to show you it's translating into student success as well. So you're going to have an opportunity today to engage with several dashboards that we've created that are publicly available for you to use after the BOTI or to take home and use in any way. And these show key performance indicators that we defined in conjunction with the Community College Research Center, designed specifically to evaluate the impact of guided pathways. We also have all of this data for each college disaggregated in several different manners. So I'm going to point out a couple things on the key. This is a static slide, so I can't show them to you live, but you'll have an opportunity later to look at them live. Oops, sorry, I messed up my laser. So up here, you're able to sort your college. So you can look at your college, you can choose several colleges to compare, or you can choose cadre, size, region, and location if you want to look at some of your peer colleges defined in different ways. But what we really have over here is interesting in these dashboards. You're able to look at the proportion and the percentage or the pure number N of students meeting each one of these key performance indicators. And we have several disaggregations that you can choose from. So you can look at how underprepared and prepared students are doing. You can look at race and ethnicity in 4 categories. You can look at gender in 2 categories, part-time or full-time. Whether or not the student received Pell, which is what we use as a proxy for socioeconomic status, but we recognize there are some limitations with that, but it is a tool that you can use, and whether or not a student entered with dual credit. And so when you pick your filter, the graph and dashboard will change so that you can observe how each one of those student subsets are doing. And so I'm excited for you to play around with that today in your team time sessions, because that'll also help you figure out what you want to monitor, monitoring what matters, and make your action plans. And so here is what I told you about earlier, the spoiler. We're doing great things here in Texas. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what these metrics are telling us. We are focused right now on early momentum metrics. So these are milestones that students meet either in the first term or first year entering community college. And Texas Pathways started in 2016. By 2021, we had all 50 colleges. So it's going to be a while for us to really evaluate our long-term measures like graduation and transfer. Those are our 3-year measures. So in the meantime, we're looking at these early momentum metrics. Research has told us that they're predictive of long-term outcomes. So what's really exciting is that when we see improvements in these early momentum metrics, we can get excited that they are going to translate. Research tells us they will translate into improvements in completion and transfer. So I want to draw your eyes up there. Take a look at math. Oh, I keep messing up my laser. 29% in 2015, the lowest of the 3, math, reading, and writing, but it grew by 8%. Now, we're all educators here. This is a big needle move. You know, this is not a minor thing. And it's not the only one that's growing. All of these are growing, with the exception of persistence, at statistically significant rates. We should be very excited to see that our students, in the first part of their experience, are earning college credits, they're completing their requirements in math, reading, and writing, and we're even seeing larger credit attainment at 15 and 30 hours as well. So it's really exciting. It's evidence that it's working, so we think that our theory of change is holding. The other thing that you're able to see is the idea that we want to close gaps between students that have been racially minoritized or historically underserved in our colleges. So I'm going to talk you through this graph as well. On the left are the early momentum metrics that we were talking about earlier. And you have several bars up here. The top bar in blue are our white students. The second bar in burnt orange are students from other races and ethnicities. And then I want to draw your attention to the bottom 2 bars. In green are Hispanic students, and in gray are African American students. Now, these are the growth rates, right, from 2015 to 2019. And so with the exception of persistence, Texas Pathways is lifting everyone's boats. These are positive growth rates. But what we want to see is that the students that have been Hispanic and African American and historically underserved are growing at a faster rate, which means those gaps would be closing. So take a look at when those bars are longer. So earning 15 credits, everyone's doing better, but we're seeing progress in those students that we really want to serve better by these college reforms. Take a look down here at writing, as well as reading, and earning 6 credits. So we are excited. We want to lift all boats, but we really want to reform our colleges to serve everybody and help certain students move forward. And this is exciting evidence that that's happening. So we have a lot. That was a very brief overview of a lot of the work that we do at the center, but we have a lot of resources available for you on our website and that you will be able to look at again today in your team time, including the Scale of Adoption Report from 2019, which will go over some of those results in 2019. You saw the introduction to 2021. We are currently analyzing the 2021 Scale of Adoption, and that report is forthcoming. You can read about what you all did as a boards of trustees from 2019. That report is available as well as 11 key performance indicator dashboards with information about definitions and frequently asked questions as you explore those as well. So I hope that you enjoy your team time today, you have really fruitful conversations, and that the data tools we've provided help that along, which is our goal as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Christina. I so appreciate how now all 50 of our community colleges have a standardized set of data that's very easy to query and to compare to your peer institutions. So Christina, thank you so very much for the work that you've done to help move us along. And I appreciate that you all will get to dig into that data in your team times today. So with no further ado, we're going to move into our next plenary session speaker. So this is building on what we were talking about yesterday, particularly about diversity and equity. And we have a very exciting presentation that we want to share with you. And to introduce our speaker today is Nicole Eversman, who is not only a board member at Austin Community College, but she also serves on the Community College Association of Texas Trustees. So would you please help me welcome Nicole?
Good morning. I serve on the CATT board as the director representing very large community college districts, and I'm so excited to have y'all here with us today. This morning's session is going to be on diversity and equity, and our presenter is a nationally renowned faculty member on this topic, who many of you already know, Dr. Luis Ponjuan. Dr. Luis Ponjuan is an Associate Professor of Higher Education Administration and the Research Director of the IDEAL Research Project, and that is an acronym standing for Investing in Diversity, Equity, Access, and Learning, IDEAL. At the Texas A&M University College Station in their Department of Educational Administration and Human Resource Development. He has a comprehensive research agenda focused on Latino students, Latino male students, and faculty members of color. He has spoken at the White House for the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for Hispanics, the United States Congress, and institutions across the nation to raise awareness of this research agenda. We are incredibly fortunate to have Dr. Ponjuan here, so please join me in welcoming him.
Good morning. Buenos dias. And if I'm from Texas A&M, howdy. Okay, y'all really good. All right, I like that. I really like that. I am honored to be here this morning. Any A&M folks, let me just make sure. We got to get any Aggies in the room, please? Okay, all right, good, wonderful. I won't say the other group, right? Even though okay, any Longhorns, there we go. Okay, all right, wonderful, wonderful. I am honored this morning to be here with you because, you know, one of the things that I have done over the years is really try to provide what I consider something that is important to have a conversation about, but more critically, is to try to provide something that not just hits your head, but hits your heart. And so today what I'm going to try to do is give you some insights on what I think are the challenges of today. And so the title of my talk, and I only have 35 minutes, so I'm going to go fast. So I'm just going to tell you, just buckle your seatbelt, and we're going to go forward. So today's title is Leading During Uncertainty, the Value of Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity. And I say this because one of the biggest challenges that we have is this notion of uncertainty. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later on this morning. See if I can do this. Good. I want to say thank you to Cynthia and Jacob for inviting me, but more importantly, for trusting me. I want to believe that what I'm going to be sharing with you is something that resonates with all of you. So I'm going to let you know right now there's going to be a lot of audience participation. Make sure that you understand there are going to be a lot of questions I'm going to ask you that you're going to need to ask yourself, right? So here's how we're going to do it. We're going to engage in these three ways. Please be open to some new ideas and conversations that we're going to be having, because I'm going to kind of shape your mind a little bit differently in terms of how we think about diversity. I actually teach a course on this. I spend 15 weeks talking about this topic, and I'm going to try to do it in 30 minutes. So I have a lot to share with you in the next 30 minutes. Please think about how these topics apply to your campus and to you, and you're going to have an opportunity to answer some questions. And please have a pen and paper ready for notes. So make sure you have some pen and paper, because I actually am going to ask you look, I'm a professor, so I'm going to ask you questions, and I'm going to actually give you homework. So I'm just letting you know you're going to have homework as a class, okay? So I'm just preparing you ahead of time. Now, I think you need to get a little bit idea of who I am. You know, you heard all the what I consider accolades and things, but this is me. I grew up in Louisiana. Anybody from Louisiana? Any Louisiana folks? Anybody know where Franklin, Louisiana is? Anyone know where Franklin? Okay, is that like in the sticks? Is that fair to say? Like that is literally deep down South Louisiana, right? In 1973, this is our family. We got an opportunity to be spotlighted in the newspaper, and this is Martha and Luis and their three kids. Graciela, which her birthday was yesterday. Myself, Luis, you can tell who I am. I'm a little chubby, but that's okay. I already asked the photographer to drop off 30 pounds when she's taking pictures of me, so I'm hopeful that will work. And then there's my brother, Jorge. Now, when you think of this, and you can't read the language on the bio underneath, Basically, at this time, none of the kids could speak English. At this time, my mom, who stayed-at-home mom, didn't speak English at all. And somehow, some way, all three of us, and this is the power of what you're engaged in as a community college institution. Somehow, some way, those three kids ended up having 8 college degrees between us. 8. So come on, give me some applause, right? Listen, I'm going to say this because this is really important for you to understand. As a result of what my parents sacrificed to bring us to this country, as a result of that, is it safe to assume that our family generational tree has changed forever? Absolutely, correct? Listen, we're in the business of changing lives. Let's not make it, I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. We're in the business of changing lives. And we change lives not only by empowering these students, but giving them something, as my father would say, you get a degree, no one can take that away from you. And so as a result of me being encouraged by my parents, I'm a tenured faculty member at Texas A&M University, a flagship AAU institution. I have published dozens of articles and policy briefs and books on the issue around Latino students, particularly Latino males. I'm a consultant to the state of California, Kentucky, and the Texas community college system. I just spent, on Monday of this week, beginning of this week, I spent a 2-day retreat with all the vice presidents of student affairs at their community college system office to talk about the role that community college student affairs plays in achieving community college goals. So I have a lot of opportunity to engage and talk to different folks. Like you've heard, I presented my research to the U.S. Congress and the White House. I'm also a practitioner, so I've actually worked in TRIO programs, I've worked in academic advising, I worked in residence life, and I actually did a lot of work in enrollment management. So when I talk about this work, I'm going to try to share with you the connection between research and practice. But more importantly, what I want to do is I want to translate what I'm going to be talking about in ways that you have something tangible to take away. Fair? And then, of course, I'm a Cuban immigrant, Spanish speaker, and first-gen graduate. I just had the opportunity, unfortunately, my mother had to be evacuated from Louisiana because they had the hurricane. They just got electricity day before yesterday. 2.5 weeks without, listen, if you can understand what 2.5 weeks with no electricity means, no electricity, no water, it was absolutely insane. And I evacuated her. She came to live with me. And I felt like I was 14 again. You don't eat enough, right? Really? You don't eat enough. And you need to go to bed. You're working too much, right? And then the most famous question my mom asked me is, so what exactly do you do? Because I see you in front of a computer, and I really don't understand what you do. So this is what I do. This is what I do. The fact of the matter is, I'm going to have to tell you what the purpose is. To engage with community college presidents and board of trustees to discuss the concepts of diversity, inclusion, and equity. I have the microphone so I could talk. To explore how the concept of cultural humility as a leader, to learn about individual differences. So here's the first thing I need you to write down. I want you to write down the term cultural humility, because that's going to be something that we're going to really apply a lot today, right? This notion of cultural humility, okay? And number 3, to develop a network of leaders who want to explore and expand how the institution achieves organizational success with diversity, inclusion, and equity as a tangible, institution-wide, okay, I think the screen's a little bit not enough, institution-wide goals. So, we're gathered today to have a conversation about what Board of Trustees and leaders can do to achieve what we believe are critical elements for success for our students. What I'm going to try to do, what I want to accomplish today is simple. I want to be an instrumental catalyst to create safe spaces for conversations about diversity, inclusion, and equity. When we have these conversations, sometimes I feel like it's a taboo word. And I really don't want to get into that conversation because, quite frankly, it doesn't become productive. So I'm going to try to break it down for you because, believe it or not, diversity includes everyone in this room. 2, I want to empower you to share your thoughts and opinions with your peers because you're going to have an opportunity not only today, but as you move forward in this next academic year to have some meaningful conversations, and I want you to start thinking about your opinions. So I'm going to give you some things to think about that you're going to want to have to talk to the people that you're engaged with. And then finally, I want to inspire you to be committed to linking diversity, inclusion, and equity. And here's the key to institutional excellence. I think sometimes we often feel like when we have diversity, that means at the expense of something else. And I'm going to try to point out to you that those are not mutually exclusive. And so my hope is that when we have the conversation about diversity, inclusion, and equity, we really get into some meaty conversations about what this actually means, but more importantly, how do we break it down? But before we go there, you see this all over the place now, right? You see this, right? In fact, the COVID pandemic, COVID-19, has created uncertainty, challenges, and unforeseen ongoing problems, are also known as VUCA, for many Texas colleges, community colleges, and their respective communities. Does anybody understand what VUCA is? VUCA is a military college. So the military college have military leaders going into preparing future leaders that go into war, right? And so the military college created the term VUCA. And you know, there's always acronyms for everything. So VUCA is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So when we get into, we're currently, so this is the actual term used in military colleges. When we're dealing with COVID, we're dealing in VUCA times. It's volatile. We're not sure what's going to happen next. In fact, Delta is going to come with Zeta, which is going to come after Alpha. We don't know what variant's going to come, right? We know that there's going to be complexity because we recognize that when we engage in the business of education, there's going to be complexity because they have a lot of shareholders in the conversation. And of course, ambiguity. So when we talk about the notion of what we have to do as leaders, we have to understand how we work in VUCA times, right? So we're going to talk about that in greater detail. I want to make sure I'm on time, make sure we're doing well. But that's not enough just to know that you're going to have to deal with uncertainty or VUCA times. The fact is, we meet faculty, administrators, and students who are different from us. That's a fair statement. Everyone in this room is different from one another. Fair? Okay, wonderful. However, we must recognize that everyone has unique visible and invisible individual identity-based traits. What does that actually mean? What do we mean by that? So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to ask you to start thinking about diversity in a very different way. Now, I'm going to say this because I think it's important you recognize when I talk about diversity, I don't just talk about Black and Latinos. I don't see diversity just as that. I see diversity as being something very, very more complex that encompasses everyone. Because when we start thinking about diversity as everyone in this room, we start to recognize that diversity isn't about just lifting one group or another group, but lifting all the groups in their own unique way. And so I'm going to give you an example of what this means because this is really helpful to hit the point, and this is where I'm going to really have to ask you to get involved with my talk. So what do you have here? What's this? Now, if you're from Louisiana, you know that's like the beginning of a good roux, right? We're gonna be cooking, right? And my mom's a cook, right? My mom cooked for all her life, and as you can see, I'm a product of that. But onions, we're all onions. And we're all onions because, quite frankly, our individual identities are like onions, which vary in size. We all have very different sizes. That's all I'm gonna say, right? But we also have many layers. Onion has many, those are invisible traits. And so because we're onions, I really want you to start thinking about how you, as an individual, define your identity. And so we're going to have a little bit of an exercise here. So first, we're going to go ahead and take a look at visible traits, okay? Now, visible traits are things that, quite frankly, we often look at as saying, primarily, hey, we're just going to look at, everybody, does everybody have a height in this room? Raise your hand if you have a height. Yes, if you do, everybody has a height. Everybody has a weight. I don't want to talk about weight, but does everybody has a weight? Yes. You don't want to admit to it. I understand, ladies. I get that. Phenotype is what we would also consider skin tone. How many people have a tattoo? Raise your hand if you have a tattoo. People come, raise your hand now. Let's go. Let your freak flag fly. Come on. If you have a tattoo, raise your hand. Be proud of your tattoo, right? Some people have tattoos that are hidden, so we won't go there, right? People have jewelry. People have physical impairments. People have teeth, right? Or some people don't have teeth. We won't go there, right? When I gave a talk at a community college, I was at Lamar State College, and they had the whole dental hygienist group right there. And I was like literally right on top of them. And I said, and everybody has teeth. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm nervous now. The dental hygienist is going to say, you need to floss. You need to floss, right? We have scars. We have language accents that we can't hide. We have language dialects. We have outgoing personalities. And I want to point out to you, this right now is without coffee. I don't drink coffee. So that kind of should scare you. I do not drink coffee, and that's a good thing, right? We also have people in the LGBTQI communities expressing their identities. In other words, some of you have some really questionable hairstyle choices when you were in the 80s, right? Because some of you are in the 80s, I'm just going to say questionable, right? The fact is those are things that we really cannot hide. So when we talk about diversity, a lot of times we focus on this. But in reality, notice how what I'm about to show you. When we talk about individual and visible traits, we have all of this. And so here's where we're going to go. So I kind of color-coded them differently. So here's what I want you to think about. How many people, now this is an invisible trait, how many people are only child, like you're the only sibling, the only child in the family? Anybody raise your hand? Okay, well, let's give them a round of applause because they've had a very special life, right? They have had a very special life. Privilege is not even the beginning of the word of an only child, right? Must be nice, right? Okay, good, thank you. Now, let's talk about people. Now, this is what I love, right? If you are, everybody stand up if you can. I want to have you stand up. Everybody stand up. Here we go. All right, here we go. All right, now here we go. If you are a family, only siblings, we're counting siblings only, okay? 3 siblings or less, sit down. 3 siblings or less, sit down. If you have, you know where we're going with this, right? It's gonna get crazy in a moment. 5 siblings or less, sit down. 5. Oh boy, here we go. These are by the way, the people who are only children, this is where it gets really crazy, right? 7 children. 8 children. 9 children. 10 children. 11 children. 11, stand up, you're the winners. Let's give them a round of applause. Now, here's the thing. Would you have ever known that they came from family 11? So I'm going to ask the people who are, because y'all are in a very, by the way, the record has been thus far, after I've done this a lot of times, 14. I don't know how the mother actually lived to live through 14 pregnancies, right? Oh, and no twins, by the way. 0 twins, 14 pregnancies. I'm like, wow. For the folks from 11 siblings, is it safe to assume that you had a pretty exciting childhood? Absolutely. Can you look at the people who are, because I think the 11 is with the 1. All right, y'all need to talk to each other and tell them how hard it's been to be with 11 versus 1, right? The fact of the matter is we don't know. We don't know, and here's the thing. We don't know the students who come from those types of families that are trying to get an education from your institution. Does that make sense? So what I'm trying to share with you is what I'm talking about is something that cuts across all of us. I can talk about immigrant document status. We won't go into that. We're going to talk about the one in green here on the second row, and that's food and housing insecurity. A colleague of mine, Dr. Goldwood-Grab, has done a lot of work on this issue because, quite frankly, we have a lot of students that are not worrying about whether or not they're going to go to class. They're worrying about where they're going to get their next meal. They don't know how they're going to figure out the finances to pay the rent. So when we talk about the work of diversity, we're going to think about diversity in very broad terms. Because of financial stress. I won't even get into the first gen because that's kind of like old. That's old news. Everybody's first gen, we get it. But by golly, one of the things that we recognize, first gen cuts across all of these different characteristics, which makes the reality of who we serve very complex. VUCA, very complex. So as leaders, we have to start recognizing that these students have very, very complex lives. And more importantly, as a result, some of us may have, and by the way, just like everybody has a height and weight, everyone in this room has implicit bias and prejudice. I'm going to just listen, by the way, I'm part of that group too. We all do. We all have implicit bias and prejudice, and quite frankly, this is something that we're going to have to address as we move forward because, quite frankly, when we go into this conversation, we all are like icebergs. Which of your identity traits do you allow others to see? So here's what I want you to, in the paper, I want you to write down your visible traits, your 3 primary visible traits, the 3 things that you think people, when they see you or when they hear from you, what are the 3 things that they automatically notice about you as a physical trait? Okay? And I just want you to write this down, not for a therapy or a therapy session, but really just about for you to recognize that all of you are going to have something different about who you are that you're going to highlight to describe how you see yourself. Number 2, invisible traits. I'm going to say this right now. A lot of you are under some of you are in financial stress. Some of you are dealing with depression. Some of you are dealing with fear. Some of you have some dreams of what you want to achieve. And just like you do, the students that we serve do. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to help you recognize, the very things that you think about yourself, we should think about how that relates to the students we serve. And not have what I consider a very limited understanding. There are Latino students who are first gen and that's it. When in reality, there are a lot of different things. And I'm going to say something real quickly because I think it's important for you to recognize why this matters. We have a lot of people in this room right now who are suffering. They may not show it. They may not want to admit it, but they're suffering. And I say that because I'm the first one to admit it. You know, 18 months ago, my father was killed. He was 86 years old, and he got run over at a Walmart parking lot. And then he survived. Miraculously, he was 86 years old, he survived. Went through surgery, survived surgery, went to rehab, survived rehab, but while in rehab, the clerk dropped him on his head and had to go back to the emergency room. And then 7 days later, he died. I will never, ever forget what happened to my father. And every day, I suffer. You don't know. And we have some folks in who've lost children. Children have died. We have folks here who've had grandmothers that meant everything to them, that was their primary caretaker, that have died. We have folks who've been divorced. We have folks who've gone through untold tragedies that are beneath the water. So when we start talking about what we're trying to do, you don't know what others are dealing with in their daily lives. We must offer grace, compassion, respect, and care to help them feel a sense of belonging to their campus. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to write, you don't have to share this with anyone. I want you to write down the 3 things, the invisible traits that define you according to you. You don't have to share this with everyone because here's what I want you to recognize. Just like everybody has a visible trait, everybody has an invisible trait to demonstrate that they're dealing with something or they have something or they have something about them that they have to recognize and have to accept. And when I share this with you, I'm sharing this with you not because I'm trying to make you feel sad. I'm sharing this because I want you to recognize that there are a lot of students who are dealing with things that we have no clue the impact they're having in their lives. So as administrators, as board of trustees, as leaders who are presidents, I know Dr. Serrata's in the room. Dr. Ponce's in the room. I know Dr. Vela's in the room. I know they understand the challenges that they face. I work with them. I recognize that. And yet, even those leaders struggle. No one is immune from the challenges that we face. So when we talk about diversity, we need to start recognizing everyone at your community college deserves to be treated with respect, dignity, and value, regardless of the visible and invisible traits. I need a hand clap right here, please, right? Listen, so when we start having conversations about why this matters, let's not forget that this means if they feel this way, you can feel this way as well. So when we talk about diversity, we need to show respect, dignity, and value because sometimes, and we're dealing with tribalism now more than ever in our country, we kind of forget that we share a lot more in common than we do not. Does that make sense? Right? It's just our ability to do this. So, Anybody been at a party? Anybody been to a party? Raise your hand. If you haven't, I feel sorry for you. I feel so sorry for you. All right. How about you've been in a meeting or an event and you felt out of place, unwelcomed, right? Ignored, invisible, or you felt like your voice is muted. Everyone in this room has felt those experiences at one time in their lives. No one's immune from this. Let me tell you why. Because there are going to be some students that come to your campus that will feel this way as well. Do you understand the connection now? So the fact of the matter is, we must practice inclusion. Our leadership must demonstrate that everyone in our campus community feels respected, valued, seen, and heard. Because a lot of times, this is what they're feeling. So as a board of trustees, how are we creating an environment, a climate that eliminates this and makes people feel respected, valued, seen, and heard? So that's inclusion. So here's some of the questions. We don't have time because I'm really running out of time and I have to get moving. I have about 10 minutes left. And I really want to get into the conversation about some things that I think are important. I'll share this with you. If you want the slides, I can give you the slides. I'll make sure, because a lot of people, when I get my slides, they're like, oh my gosh, first of all, they're really pretty. Thank you. But the next thing is I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to look at this later on. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that I give it. We good? All right, good. Thank you. All right, because who is not being invited to the meeting? How do others encourage participation from everyone in those meetings? Why some students do not feel safe to ask questions in class? I don't care what class you're in. Some people say, diversity doesn't belong in statistics. I teach statistics, by the way. Diversity doesn't belong in chemistry. But relationships do. And sometimes students, I do a whole section. I've been asked to give a keynote to all of the community college math instructors of America. There are about 1,200 math instructors. And this is what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be talking about, you talk about math, but do your students feel safe in the classroom? What pronouns does a person prefer to use to validate their identity? What do you do when you realize that someone feels disrespected, unheard, and not valued? What do? Do you just stand by and let it go? More importantly, what policy programs and places make someone feel excluded? These are the conversations that we need to have as leaders. But you know, too often when we get into these spaces, we kind of have to remind ourselves that we sometimes have to take the 30,000-foot view. So I thought this was a good picture, pretty picture, that captures this idea of equity. We must value equity. Equity, it is the belief that leaders create the campus conditions which are fair and just, so that everyone, and when I say everyone, diverse, visible, invisible traits, right, can fully participate, and this is the operative word, fully participate. So here's the question I want you to ask as leaders. How am I, just write this down because this is part of your homework, how do I, in my position, help create the conditions at the community college that allows all students to fully participate and reach their full potential? In other words, I'm holding you responsible. What can I do to help create those conditions? What can I do to help address this issue? What can I do to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to reach their full potential? And so, this is kind of like the master plan, if you will. Diversity, the visible and invisible traits. Inclusion, how do we create a sense of belonging where they don't feel like they're being not heard or whatever? We all have to deal with a sense of inclusion. It's something that we practice. So really quick, diversity is the noun because we all have different things that define us. Inclusion is the verb. We have to work daily to help people feel like they belong and like they're invited to the party. And equity is the belief. The idea that we believe that everyone deserves to have the opportunity to reach their full potential. Quite frankly, that's what the ethos of a community college is. Fair? Everybody to reach their full potential, no matter who you are? The fact is, it's cut off, so institutional leaders must align our work to reflect those values at community colleges. In other words, if you want to due north, If you want to due north as a leader, this should be your due north. Not because you want more black and brown kids to graduate. That's going to be a big push. But the fact of the matter is, this is what we need to do as leaders to demonstrate the value of what we do. And so, all community college leaders to cultivate an inclusive campus climate. Fact is, how do we talk to others? What language? When we get in spaces like this, how do we talk to one another? How do we talk to presidents? How do we talk to students? How do we talk to people who are invested in the community college? How do we engage with others? How do we show people that they actually matter? So I want you to take a look at each other, take a look right in the table, and say, you look good today. Come on now. Come on. You look good today. Yeah? Yeah, I like it. Right? Listen, I'm going to be honest with you. Some of the biggest challenges that we have is that we have to act differently. And acting differently means that we just have to have the right behavior because people are watching. You know how they say kids copycat their parents, right? People are copycatting you as a leader. And spaces. How do classroom and social spaces invite others, like folks with physical disabilities? The fact is that I'm just giving you kind of examples of things. How we talk, how we engage, and how we create the spaces to make these people feel like they belong. If we really do care, listen to me, if we really do care, we must disrupt institutional complacency. I need a little hand clap there, right? Is that right? Because if we're going to do this right, we gotta shake this up, folks. We gotta shake this up because we recognize institutional complacency is something that we kind of like, oh, here we go again. There's a diversity guy. Or there are a lot of folks that say, oh, we have a vice president of diversity, inclusion, and equity. Yay! Okay, what program are you gonna give me now? And they tune out. And they get complacent. So we need to go from awareness to action. And I want to help you activate your leadership voice to support diversity, inclusion, and equity. Because if you're going to be complacent, you got to activate your leadership voice. Okay? So here's another question I need you to write down. How do I define my leadership voice when it comes to DEI? How do I define my leadership voice? Because I'm going to tell you right now, this is not the responsibility of a chief diversity officer. Does that make sense? This is a responsibility for all of us because some people would say, why should I care about this? Because if you're a leader, it affects all your community. It affects all of us. So to activate it, I'm going to give you the 5 Ps, all right? And I have 5 minutes left, so I'm good. Christina, Cynthia, I'm moving, right? 5 minutes left. How does diversity, inclusion, and equity exist in community college? Here are the 5 Ps. Number 1, the policies. What policies are adversely affecting marginalized students and faculty and staff? What policies are actually in place? You know, I had an opportunity to meet with, and I don't know if he's here, Dr. Gregory Williams from Odessa College, fascinating leader, fascinating. And he created a policy that just blew my mind. He says, you know what? We're going to create a policy, and I can share this because this is public information. He says, we're going to create a policy where the first class is on us. We want you to come, no strings attached, come to a class and try out our Odessa College. Another thing he said, we want to create a grading policy where no one gets an F. In other words, A, B, or C, and if they don't master it, they don't get an F. They say you just need to continue taking it again until you master it. Because when you get an F, it's a failure. And it kind of fulfills a prophecy, right? So, policy. The next P, programs. And again, I apologize for the rendering on the screen here. Which programs can we develop to help educate, empower, and engage diverse communities? Programmatic. Those are the things that TRIO does and things like that. Those are programmatics. Those are the things that Christina measures. When we do these different programs, Christina, that's one of the metrics that she measures. the program effectiveness. These first three are really the simple ones, right? Practices. How does the Board of Trustees guide their work to advance diversity, inclusion, and equity? So what do you actually do on a day-to-day basis when you have the business of doing community colleges? What practices are engaged? I also talk about this in terms of community colleges. I'm literally writing, submitting an article for publication, and we asked the question for all first contact employees. We did a study, and we asked, you're the first contact. In other words, if you're getting financial aid or if you're in admissions, you're the first person. And we asked them, what do you think about when you work with Latino men, Latino boys? And tell us your thoughts about how do we help them transition. What we found, what we thought was fascinating, how people have very different ideas who are first contact. So when we start talking about leadership and presidents, a lot of times we really focus on the first contact folks because they have implicit bias and prejudice. They have uncertainty of whether or not the student belongs there. So practices. Politics. Oh boy, the ugly P, right? How does the Board of Trustees understand the politics of creating institutional change around DEI? There are politics. And I tell you now more than ever, there's some dirty words in Texas politics right now around diversity, inclusion, and equity. Is that fair? There's some dirty words, right? But what I'm trying to highlight, listen, what I'm trying to highlight, what's our common ground? We have enough challenges in our communities about creating tribes. What I'm trying to find out, what's our common ground? Because quite frankly, the politics are going to derail. And then the last P are players or people. Who are the potential shareholders that need to be heard? Faculty, administrators, staff, students, and you can't see it down there, but families, right? If we're going to be talking about DEI, we need to think about these 5 Ps. Okay? Like I said, I'm going to give you the slides. Don't worry. We'll get into that. So here's your homework assignment. Leading during VUCA times to advance diversity, inclusion, and equity, I'm going to give you homework assignments. Assignment number 1. Meet with the students, faculty, and staff and ask them if their institution values diversity, inclusion, and equity. Ask them. You're the leaders. Let's just ask. What do you think? And I'm going to say something because I do research on this. What do we know about adjunct professors who are really the unsung silent heroes in community colleges? What do adjunct professors say about, do you really value diversity, inclusion, and equity? Have an honest conversation with the Board of Trustees that you're representing to understand how they value inclusion, diversity, and equity. Because I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of times when we have these conversations, a lot of folks end up saying, we're going to start talking about people of color again. And I've just pointed out, there's some people that are coming from families of 12, 11, that have to try to figure out how they're going to go to college, trying to figure out how or are veterans. By the way, my brother Jorge, he was a veteran. He did 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan. And I have immense respect for the veterans. And yet, they're suffering too. So when we talk about diversity, we may have follow me here. We may have a black female veteran with 2 kids on financial aid, wondering whether or not Lone Star Sci-Fair cares about her. Does that make sense what I just said? So when we have conversations, this is important. We may have, I just came back from Kentucky, we may have, and Kentucky's 87% white, the state, 87% white. And I had to reframe it. I said, you may have a white female that's above the age of 30 with 2 kids on financial aid and living with her mother trying to decide whether or not community college is for her. So it cuts across all communities. The last assignment. We need to have conversations with the community college leadership about ways how they will infuse diversity, equity, inclusion at their institution. Now, it's not enough to just talk about it. Show me tangible ways that you're infusing this. This is your homework. These are the things that you have to think about. These are the things that you have to engage in, because if I just taught you about diversity, inclusion, and equity and don't give you anything to take back and put into practice, then quite frankly, all I've done is just talk to you. And that's not enough. I'm going to tell you why. Because I'm in the business of trying to solve problems. My mom and dad we're hustling all the time trying to solve problems. So in my mind, yes, I'm a scholar. Yes, I do analysis. Yes, I do dashboards and all that. But at the end of the day, love the dashboards, by the way, Kristen. Love them. I'm a big geek. Love them, right? But here's the deal. Dashboards mean nothing. Dashboards mean nothing if data is only to create debates and not discussions, right? And solutions, right? So when I talk about why we need DEI, it's not just to talk to and beat you up and say you suck as an individual because you don't respect people who are different from you. It's about recognizing that because people are different from you, you have to care more about them. Listen, folks, we're all in this together. We just got through with the Olympics. I love the Olympics. In order to advance diversity, inclusion, and equity, we need to work as an effective team to have honest and productive, and these I put them in bold, honest and productive conversations to achieve these institutional goals. While the road is long and uncertain, remember that your leadership to advance diversity, inclusion, and equity helps students to achieve academic success, and like I said at the beginning of this talk, to change their lives. We're in the business of change. Listen, if we don't understand the why of what we do, then we will never get into a conversation about how and what we need to do. Do you hear what I just said? If we don't have a conversation why we do what we do, and I'm going to tell you right now, our job, and you're going to hate me saying this, is not to increase graduation rates. That's not our job. Our job is to change lives because they've achieved degree completion. Do you see the difference? Do you see that difference? Because if we're going to say we need to do this because we want to get higher because legislators want higher numbers and ROI and all that stuff, we're going to lose the fact that we're in the business of changing lives. Period. End. Let's not fool ourselves. While we have the metrics, they're important. At the end of the day, you have a Cuban immigrant with parents who didn't speak English, suffered, worked their tails off to have their children earn 8 college degrees. Thank you very much.
Let's give another round of applause to Luis. Thank you so much, Luis. Very inspiring, and thank you for ending with the why of why we're all here today, so thank you. What we're going to do now is have the opportunity to hear about an institution that is truly changing lives. You know, every other year, the Aspen Center for Community College Excellence awards the Aspen Prize. And based on student outcome data, interviews, and an intensive site visit, the Institute awards the prize to honor institutions that are truly making a difference in students' lives. They get this by looking at teaching and learning. They are having outstanding achievements in degree completion, in transfer, with subsequent success at universities, in workforce programs that lead to high-value jobs, with equity across all of those, as Luis has talked about, as well as strong leadership and institutional climate and culture. So with that, I would like to ask the chair of the board of Alamo College, Dr. Jean Sprague, the chancellor, Mike Flores, and the president of San Antonio College, Dr. Robert Vela, to come to the stage as they are the Aspen Prize winner for this year. So please welcome.
Thank you very much.
Right, I gotta just give one more thing. Come on up.
Thanks, Martha.
Yeah. While they're getting settled in, I did want to also recognize San Jacinto College and Amarillo College that were in the top 5 finalists. Amarillo College was a rising star, and San Jacinto College was a finalist with distinction. So with that, Chairman Sprague, Chancellor Flores, President Vela, let me turn it over to you. Thank you for coming and sharing the San Antonio College experience. Chair?
Thank you. Well, especially San Antonio College, but Alamo colleges altogether is what this is really all about. And I'd like to start off first by getting the slides going. Let's see. Let's see.
I'm going to do what they did this morning and ask for assistance in pulling it up.
We're coming.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, do that one. And then
Okay. There we go. So I am Gene Sprague. I'm
Hey, afternoon.
currently the chairman of the Board of Trustees for Alamo Colleges. And I'd like to start off by recognizing my fellow trustees, 5 of whom are here with me. If they would please stand. Joe Alderetti, Dr. Lorraine Polito, Dr. Yvonne Katz, Gloria Ray, and Clint Kingsbury. So you have 2/3 of the board here with you. And we have 3 outstanding trustees who couldn't be with us for several reasons, but Ana Bustamante from our District 3, southeast part of Bexar County, Dr. Leslie Sahanovich from the northeast part of Bexar County, and Roberto. He was actually my punchline, and at least 2/3 of you know who Roberto Zarate is, right? So, needless to say, we have a great board that works together with and has a lot of fun and creativity together. So, talk a little bit about who we are as a college district. We serve 100,000 plus students. That's in, actually in class and also continuing education across 8 counties, a very large geographic area. We have 8 neighborhood and regional centers in addition to our colleges. Our main campuses. We have over 350 degree and certificate programs, and we're the largest provider of workforce training in the area. This is an area of very special interest to myself. We've become recently, in the last few years, very engaged with the business community and part of the Economic Development Foundation for Bexar County, so we're heavy into that. We just had a great inspirational talk about diversity. We have one of the most diverse areas culturally, economically, in every way you can think of across those 8 counties that we serve. That's reflected in that we have one of our campuses is historically black, serving college and university member. 3 of our colleges are Hispanic serving institutions, and we're about to add a 4th to that. So we're certified diverse. So here's a little breakdown of our family. We have 5 colleges: San Antonio College, who's going to get the spotlight today, St. Philip's College, Palo Alto College, Northwest Vista College, and Northeast Lakeview College. As mentioned, we have 8 regional neighborhood centers. We have 16 early college high schools, and that's growing rapidly. And these are the counties that we serve with Bexar County at the center. That's Bexar County is our tax supporting group. So, you know, one thing I'd like to point out is I was criticized a few years ago by somebody who said, you know, all you people do is go after awards. And, you know, first I was very offended by that, but then I stopped and think about it. You know, that's not true. If your purpose is to win awards and get national recognition, you're going to fail. The other way to approach that is through the mission that we have, which is empowering our diverse communities for success. Just exactly what our speaker before has pointed out to us in an eloquent way. That's followed by our vision. The Alamo colleges will be the best in the nation, not in getting awards, but in achieving student success and performance excellence. So that's what the rest of this presentation is going to be about when we focus on San Antonio College. That vision is reflected in our values, putting students first, a respect for all of our students, and our communities. We're community engaged. We have collaboration amongst our faculty, our staff, our administration, and the board. Everybody's rowing in the same direction. We have a can-do spirit. And the real success of our mission with our faculty and administration and the board is putting data-informed basis to make decisions. So this all boils down to the Alamo Way, which started under the direction of a former chancellor, Dr. Bruce Leslie. Many of you know him. And that foundation has been greatly accelerated and strengthened under the leadership of Dr. Flores. But the Alamo Way is a pattern, a guided pathway, if you will, for student success, principle-centered leadership. We have a little saying that we have a leader. Our goal is to have a leader in every seat. So every student, every faculty member is a leader. And then performance excellence. And that's accomplished by following the data and communicating, collaborating amongst everybody, including our students. And I should have mentioned, which I didn't, that we have a student trustee on our board. We were the first ones in Texas to do that. And that student trustee is so valuable in contributing to our decisions. There was one particular board meeting a few years ago. Our student trustee, we were discussing 7 habits as a program that we felt like our students needed to have. We wanted to put it in our policy. She spoke up and she ended the discussion by saying, do you know that course and our Student Leadership Institute literally saved my life? So don't need to say any more about that one. So that's all part of the performance excellence. So I'd like to With that background, turn it over to to Dr. Mike Flores, our Chancellor and great leader.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning. So as you can see from Dr. Sprague's beginning of the presentation, the alignment throughout the Alamo Colleges District in particular, and the vision that the board has set forth. So for Dr. Sprague and Dr. Katz, Mr. Alderete, Dr. Pulido, Ms. Ray, and Mr. Kingsbury, through all of us within the organization as a leadership team working collaboratively with our 5,000 colleagues to back up our 65,000 students this semester, it really is about the Alamo Way. It's about those three tenets that Dr. Sprague mentioned that are codified within board policy, within B91, that talks about student success. And each one is linked in particular to a framework, which as educators, right, scaffolding. So how do we scaffold in a way if we were to look at the Alamo Way student success is scaffolded to achieving the dream and utilizing that as our guide. Principle-centered leadership with regard to looking at the 7 habits, and is now that's evolved into badging with the ethos that Dr. Sprague mentioned that was coined by our colleague, the president of St. Philip's College, Dr. Lawston, and she talks about a leader in every seat, really focusing on the efficacy and the agency that each of us have as individuals within the organization. And then performance excellence, which really utilize the Baldrige framework, which is really, we had Belle Whelan last night, it's really a self-study, utilizing the Baldrige framework. How do we see ourselves within the organization? So this is who we are. Dr. Sprague mentioned the 100,000 students. We are reflective of the community that we serve. 76% students of color. Majority are female, and 1/3 are studying part-time, 2/3, one third full-time, 2/3 part-time. We've talked in our vernacular about non-traditional and traditional students. There was a presentation that we participated in the other day, and it talked about today's college students. And I think that's what's really important, right? We're really serving, and each student is coming with value and their true selves to our colleges, whether face-to-face or online, and they're all equal. They're all today's college students. There's not a traditional or a non-traditional. They're just who they are and who we serve. We're mindful of the work of surveying our students in particular, that over a majority for us are housing insecure and about half are food insecure. And I think our success is realizing that those are the students that we serve, and we need to provide them with resources so that they can be successful, not only to meet the what they do in class, but also who they are and the families that they represent within their household and within the community. There was a conversation earlier that Dr. Ponjuan talked about relative to diversity, equity, and inclusion. In 2018, the Board of Trustees passed an equity policy, which is F65, which actually talks about looking at students with regard not only to race and ethnicity, but also to veteran status, also with regard to Pell Grant status and student disability. I know as a result of, we come to BOTI often looking for how do we set the future state. So we will have conversations about how do we update that policy to reflect today's college students within the Alamo Colleges District. You can see here that it is looking at each individual student, and fortunately we've been able to have more than doubled the amount of Hispanic or Latino students that graduate over the last 7 years, and also more than doubled the number of African American or Black students that graduate from Alamo colleges over the last 7 years. In particular, guided by data informed, which Dr. Sprague mentioned is one of our core values, and also now with the codification of board equity policy F65. So I think that's the most important awards, right? Those are the most critical things and really the students that we have. So in 2020, close to 12,000, and also in 2021, close to 12,000. You saw the trend line historically that's occurred within Alamo, in which each of our student groups, and looking at a view through race and ethnicity, have increased or more than doubled. And so that's particularly critical for us. And then there's an ROI. So what does it mean? There was conversation earlier, right? It's not only about the degree, but it's about where that's going to take them. So the return on investment for our students is actually that credential is hopefully going to move them from struggle to success, from being able to ensure that they have an ROI that impacts their pocketbook, so that they can buy school supplies for their kids, so they can buy school uniforms for their kids. Maybe they can even save up for a spring break vacation. They can save up for retirement. All of those things that our students want to be able to provide. The ROI for them is close to $10,000 annually with a degree from any one of our 5 colleges, and close to $500,000 in their lifetime. So I think that's particularly critical for them. Alamo has an ethos that everything we do has to be at scale. One of the things that's important, we mentioned Baldrige, that's tied to the Alamo Way and performance excellence. I mentioned that student success is tied to achieving the dream. So we're particularly proud to have received the Leah Meyer Austin Award in 2020. And we know it's been a long 18 months. So during COVID and all of us working together as a family, it meant something to have received recognition from the San Antonio Business Journal for resilience during the last 18 months in particular. So everything at scale. So we're just all part of a team working together. So in 2019, we first saw an appearance by the Alamo Colleges District. 4 of our 5 colleges were in the top 150. We think that that's particularly significant as we move the needle in student success and ensuring our 65,000 students can move forward. We were proud of Palo Alto College receiving the Rising Star Award in 2019. I think what's particularly important is that it is a team effort. I'm joined by 2 of my colleagues. We have Dr. George Raley, Vice Chancellor for Academic Success, Dr. Lena Silva, Vice Chancellor for Student Success. Both in 2019 and 2021, 2 of the things that the site teams mentioned were our Alamo Institutes, which is our Pathways model. Thank you, Dr. Raley and colleagues. And Alamo Advise, which is our case management model. Thank you, Dr. Silva and colleagues, for that work. Top 50 in 2021. And of course, we're here today to acknowledge and celebrate the work of Dr. Vela and our colleagues at San Antonio College for being #1 in the nation. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Vela.
Thank you, Dr. Flores. I appreciate those kind words. I want to, Dr. Ponjuan, I'm signing up for your graduate class this morning. I'm ready. I'm ready. So what an amazing presentation. I also want to just acknowledge our Board of Trustees, Dr. Flores, for all the amazing leadership and guidance they provided over the years for us here at Alamo Colleges. I want to acknowledge Kay McClenny and Dr. Maria Harper-Marinick. They've been solid colleagues for me, and I still remember Kay telling me, so we did this, Kay, and she's like, so what? But we did this, Kay, so what? You know, kind of like, are you kidding me? So no, they got us on the right foot with achieving the dream, and I can't thank her enough for continuously challenging when we thought we were good, but we really weren't that good at the time. So for us, this is a journey around excellence, right? And here's the thing with this notion, is that our students may or may not understand what excellence looks like, what it feels like, or what it is. That's the furthest thing from their mind when they step into our colleges. So for us, we've been on a mission, a 7-year journey for San Antonio College to showcase excellence to our students. Because we believe that every student in our college, in our Alamo Colleges district family, deserves excellence. See, we believe that if a student experiences excellence in every aspect of instruction, student services, college services, they will begin to want it for themselves. They will begin to demand it of us and their community. And we believe that begins to change a family, that begins to change generations, and that begins to change a community. One student at a time. That's why this is worth it. The hard work that we do day in, day out. We empty the tank every single day in what we do on a day in and day out basis. So San Antonio College, roughly about 20,000 students. We're large, we're urban, we're just north of downtown San Antonio. There are the stats there, but I also put the faculty stats there because those, based on what Dr. Ponjuan just mentioned to us, they really need to match up. We align with our administration when it comes to our student demographics. We align with our staff, but we're still a little behind with our faculty. So I put that up there as a constant reminder that we've got a lot of work to do around DEI. We've got a lot of things that we want to achieve to ensure that we're reflective of our college community. So these are no-brainers. This is what Aspen preaches in their Aspen Institute for incoming presidents or current presidents. It starts and begins with leadership. And that's really easy to say, but what we don't often hear behind the scenes is the courage it takes to begin to influence and change culture. See, you can have all the strategy in place, you can have the nice dashboards, you can have everything you want in front of you, but if the culture has not changed in your institution, it's not going to work. And I can tell you at San Antonio College, for too many years, 96-year history, started off as a campus for the University of Texas at Austin back in 1925. Deep-rooted culture, deep-rooted tradition around traditional higher education. And I remember coming in as a dean 13 years ago and asking, why are our metrics the worst in the state? And you know what I got back was, well, we're large, we're urban, and we let anybody in our front door. That was the comment. How do you want us to be great when we take everything in our backyard? And in our backyard, you know whose fault it is? It's those high schools that aren't preparing our students. That's who you need to be asking, not us. That's how we started the conversation early on, 7 years ago when I became president. I said, guys, that is a deficit mindset. It's a deficit mindset because when I go to those elementary schools that we adopt, I look into a 5-year-old's eyes and we hand them a gift for Christmas and they're in tears because they think they're not going to get a gift this Christmas. I said, how do I tell that 5-year-old that San Antonio College is not for you? No. I said, that little kiddo has some talent. They have untapped talent within them. They just don't know what they don't know. We needed to start changing our mindset to an asset-based mindset. We needed to ensure that everyone knew that every student coming through our front door had a special talent. It was our job to expose it, develop it, and showcase it to the entire community. We had to change that mindset. That's what started the culture shift. We had to be committed to continuous quality improvement. We could not just say it's good enough. 85% is good enough. No, it's not good enough. You know why? Because there's 15% of those students not matriculating. And every one of those students represents a childhood dream, a childhood, can I ever make it? Can we ever get out of this generational poverty? That's what that represents. That's why each student matters. So I love what Dr. Ponjuan said, because we look at all these data sets, we look at all these metrics, and we forget that within each one of those data sets represents a data point that represents a student life, a student struggle, a student hardship that nobody talks about. So we are transforming lives. We're not about the metrics. We are about transforming lives. We should be, at least. So that's been key for us. So We disaggregate the data all the way down to the instructor, and we expose it to the entire college. Everyone knows where everybody stands. We have SAC scores days where we shut down the college in the fall, one day in the fall, one day in the spring. And it's a big data day, and we're gonna drill down to the metrics, we're gonna develop action plans, we're gonna address those achievement, performance, and equity gaps with action plans. And focus on our lead indicators to influence our lag indicators. That's what it's gonna take for us. Thirdly, data, and accountability. I don't know how else to explain it. Data is not about chopping blocks of data out. It's about a surgical instrument to understand the nuances behind what the data is trying to tell us. And I think that's been our commitment for the last 7 years. It has been a 7-year journey for us. We had some of the worst metrics in the state. And we simply got a pass by saying we're large, we're urban, and it's hard. No more. Our community deserves better. And this is just not SAC's journey. This is all the Alamo College's journey, right? But we were laser focused on inner city schools and starting to change that mindset. So you wonder, here's a conceptual framework of what it takes to do continuous quality improvement, to focus on data, and accountability. This is our conceptual framework of what we do day in and day out to ensure that we understand our data, that we understand what we're doing day in and day out for student success in our student population. It's complicated. It's complicated. Dr. Serratas, I still use this, sir, to this day. It's not about the silver bullet, right? It's about the silver buckshot. It takes a lot of silver buckshots to get things moving in the right direction, no doubt, right? So this is a sampling of something that we do in SAC scores days, where we look at our performance indicators and start to really drill down for every single course, every single unit within our college. We assess 2,200 courses every semester. We don't sample. We assess everything. We assess every student service opportunity, every college service opportunity. Everything gets assessed every semester. And Dr. Ponjuan, you would be proud of us, because if you look up there, we're looking at male, female, Hispanic, non-white, all the special veterans, all the special populations, to ensure what instructors do really, really well and can really relate to our veteran students. And guess where most of those students are going to end up? By design, where do you think they're going to end up? They're going to end up in those instructors' courses, because they have demonstrated that they understand what our veterans are going through, and they may have been a veteran themselves, they get it, but they happen to have some content mastery in history. We're going to line them up. We're going to be very intentional on how we place our students into their scheduling. It's not just about putting them in classes anymore, right? We have to be intentional where our students are going. These are some of our achievements. Obviously, what I keep reminding our staff is, because you win the Aspen Award doesn't mean that you're perfect or that you have an A+. Success inhibits innovation. And we're going to double down on the fact that we still have performance gaps, we still have achievement gaps, we still have equity gaps to deal with. So this work does not stop simply because we've been affirmed in a very big way. And my knees started to shake because I see one of our evaluators here. I'm not going to acknowledge her, but I remember the process, and it was worse than SAC COC. So they interviewed 70 people, community, students, staff, faculty, everybody, and we were scared out of our minds. And all I simply said, well, we got to bring everybody together. We got to help them. I met with every subgroup, and I said, guys, just tell your story. Tell what's in your heart. That's the best advice I can give you. And I remember at the debrief telling me, Dr. Vela, We've heard a lot of colleges talk about being a family and being all committed to your mission, but you've actually proven it today. You actually walk the walk. And I could not hold back my tears, because that's what it's been for us. A labor of love, hard work, day in, day out, and then to be affirmed in a very big way from one of the most prestigious organizations. It felt like a dream, felt like a dream to me. Texas is not supposed to win this award. Right, William? We're not supposed to win. What an amazing affirmation. What an amazing affirmation for tremendous work. I do want to congratulate my partners in Texas, right? Because it's hard to do what we do in Texas. So I can't express my gratitude and how proud I am of San Jacinto College. I actually worked there for 3 years. Wonderful organization, wonderful commitment to students. And they've done some amazing things every single cycle. So I'm so proud of San Jac, Amarillo College, Odessa College. This is a great day for the state of Texas to have these many folks in the top 10 in the hunt for this amazing award. So it still feels like a dream, right? It still feels like, did we just win this? And let me just, some of you, I may have not shared this, but the day the announcement was made, I had a phone call from Mackenzie Scott's associate that morning, probably about 9:30 that morning. And she said, Dr. Vela, Mackenzie Scott believes in your mission, believes in what you're doing, and we want to gift you $15 million. I said, what? I said, so let me tell you a little something. I said, I remember as a kid wishing that I had a long lost grandfather, that at some point he'd give me $1 million and I could just do whatever I wanted. I know this is not for me. This is for my college. This is what we're going to do. And it's unrestricted. You spend it, you use it. Mackenzie Scott has full confidence in you to use it the way you need it for this college. Blown away. I've got more restrictions on $10,000 than a $15 million gift. I said, please tell her she is an angel walking on earth. And they made it very clear that she's making more money than she can give it away. So all you colleges out there thinking that they're not watching, they're watching what you do. And she's got more money to give to us. So go out there and knock it out of the park and go get some of that amazing resources to ensure that we fulfill our mission. So thank you for this invitation. I can't be more proud to work in one of the best community colleges district in the country. I can't thank our Board of Trustees enough. Can't thank Dr. Flores enough for everything that we do. It's a tireless, endless commitment to student success, specifically to transform lives and transform our beautiful community. Thank you.